Hey, this is Bailey,
And I'm Timothy.
and welcome to What Sleep Podcast.
Let's get right into it.
Woo. So, the long awaited and most requested case so far is the Dyatlov Pass incident.
This is honestly my favorite case.
Yeah, that's what we're covering today.
So, this one is honestly the case that got me into it, like true crime. Because when I first started listening to podcasts, they cover the Golden State Killer. Oh, English is hard, and the usual suspects type of thing, and but then I stumbled across Morbid Podcast. Actually, shout out to them.
Hey, what's up? Let's do a collab.
I listened to their episode of the Dyatlov Pass incident, and that's how I was like, wow, this is super interesting.
It's a crazy case, and they did a lot of research, so I hope I live up to their quality of research and delivery, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Really enjoy their podcast, so shout out to y'all if y'all ever happen to listen to this.
Yeah. Ashley and Elena.
Yeah, love you guys. But
so today we are covering the Dyatlov Pass incident. So just a little bit about Dyatlov Pass and where it's at, kind of just a little bit about it. Dyatlov Pass is located in the Ural mountain range, and that actually runs from the north and the south, from the north to the south through Western Russia while it was still the Soviet Union. And it's just off the coast of the Arctic Ocean. So it's super cold and it's way up there.
I like the cold, but I don't like that.
It's very cold. Historically, the mountain range was known to have rich resources. It had a lot of metal ores, coal, and a ton of precious stones. Some of those stones include andrite.
Isn't it that green crystal, velvety looking crystal? Right?
I think so. I looked up pictures. I genuinely can't remember any of them.
I'm pretty sure andradite is super pretty. It's an almost jade color. I am completely wrong.
I mean, some of it. Yeah, so it can be different colors. But
okay, I might be right, but according to these pictures, I am horribly wrong.
So again, so some of the precious stones that are in this mountain are and I can't say it right. Andradite, beryl, platinum, and lots of different types of quartz.
Rose quartz.
Yeah.
I remember getting those at elementary school when they would make us do the fake dig thing.
I like those.
I did too. That's just a lot of quartz and fool's gold. So I got a couple amethyst.
Oh really?
That's my birthstone.
Amethyst is pretty cool. Mine's diamond. It's very boring.
But yours is the most expensive.
For no reason. Diamonds shouldn't be that expensive.
It's a shiny rock.
They've been hyped up by the diamond industry for far too long.
That's another conspiracy.
Down with the diamonds. All right.
Get me a ring pop so I know it's real.
So the mountain range has obviously been a huge contributor for the Russian economy since the 18th century when they started mining into it. All right. So that's just a little bit of history on the mountain in the past. So in 1959, there was a group of hikers that was put together for an expedition across the northern Urals. The group of hikers were enlisted by Igor Dyatlov, just a happy coincidence that his name was the same as the pass. A lot of their names are similar, as we'll go into later. All of the hikers were actually fellow students or peers at the Ural Polytechnical Institute, which is now known as the Ural Federal Institute, but they were all co-students and they all went to the same university. All of the members of the group were what's considered grade 2 hikers, making them super experienced with the outdoors and with survivability. So all of them were very active and oftentimes would go hiking.
Definitely not their first try.
Definitely not their first time. Yeah, I'll get into that. In the post-USSR countries, there is actually a grading system for hiking. Obviously, each grade factors into difficulty, altitude, the length of the hike, and what they consider commitment. And I'm pretty sure it's something like commitment, like an Alaskan or something. I don't know why it's called that, but
I don't know.
That was one of on their rubric.
I'm very much not an active person, so.
Fair. Me neither. So being grade 2 meant that the hikers were all experienced in ascension of peaks between 2,000 and 6,000 meters.
Big boys.
Yeah. Or traverses that are on that same level. So they could go up to 2,000 meters and then hike a specific distance that was required for grade 2. And then obviously they had to be on a specific terrain such as rock, snow, and ice. Their goal for this trip on this expedition was to gain the next hiking grade, which requires an ascension peak of between 2,500 and 6,500 meters, or traversing of the same terrain, as well as it was required that they travel at least 300 kilometers, or for us Americans, 186 miles. Obviously, they didn't have to do this all in one go, so this was just like...
so far.
It is a really long distance, but you do need to be very experienced if you're going to be traveling at altitudes that high up, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Minimum 2,500, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so... but again, obviously, you could split this up and do, like, different hiking trips. It just kind of adds on to your experience, basically. So, obviously, it goes without saying that that is a very difficult thing for... most people to do.
Yeah, like I do 10 minutes on a treadmill, I'm already out of breath.
But again, this should have been something that they could have easily accomplished, I
mean, yeah, they already got the grade 2 thing, so it's not too much worse.
Being that this was going to be their last hiking expedition to gain grade 3, they've already done, at least 150 miles already of hiking. So it's not like they haven't done this already or been working on it. The route that they were to take was planned by the group to reach the route that they were to take was planned by the group to reach the far northern region of the upper streams of the Lozva River. It might be Lozva. I'm really sorry. So most of the names and most of the names and places of this case is in Russian, and I don't speak Russian, so I'm gonna butcher the accent, but I'm just going to continue with that.
Almost as bad as me with general English.
It's okay. You only speak the language as a first language. That's fine. So the route was actually approved by, here's another one, the Sverdlovsk City Route Commission.
Sverdlovsk.
I think it's Sverdlovsk. There's a V at the end and then an SK. So Sverdlovsk, you know what?
Anyways.
I said it anyway. By the commission of that place's city on January 8th in 1959. The goal of this expedition was to reach the Gora Otorten, which is a mountain that sits at 10 kilometers or 6.2 miles for us Americans, north of the site where the incident took place. So they were only going to be going about 10 kilometers.
So, yeah, and not too far away from, places.
Right. Yeah. Still relatively close to civilization. It's just, it's a mountain. They did plan to make the trek during what is considered like the most dangerous and difficult time to do so. So it was scheduled for February. They want
brownie points or something?
Yeah, it was more of they wanted to impress the guy who was pretty much going to sign off on their new grades. So they're like, yeah, we'll just go in February, whatever. You do you. It's fine. Now we're going to talk about the hikers involved. There were 10 of them. I'm just going to kind of list them off and about the age that they were at the time of their hike.
Good luck with these names.
At their expedition. Yeah, please don't come at me. Please don't come at me. So
I'm sitting here reading them and I'm like, I can't.
I'm going to try. There were 8 men and 2 women. And I'm just going to name them. So there's Igor Dyatlov, who was 23, Yuri Doroshenko, who was 21, Lyudmila Dubanina, who was 20. Yeah, I got it. This one's going to be a little bit hard. Georgy Krivonishenko. It's Krivonishenko. I looked these up last night, so I'd remember. Who was 23. Alexander Kolovatov, who was 24. Zenaida Kolmergot.
Honestly, this is fun for me.
Cool stuff. Kolmar Gorosha, who was 22. Rustam Slobodin, who was 23. Nikolai Thibault Brignoles, who was 23. Semyon Zolotaryov, who was 38. And lastly, Yuri Yudin, who was 21. That was my favorite one because it's so easy to say.
Yuri Yudin.
Yuri Yudin, who was 21 at the time. All right, so now that I've butchered that and made your ears bleed, we're going to go on to the expedition.
I had fun with it. Because it wasn't me, for one, struggling with words.
Well, this is Russian.
Yeah,
I speak English.
Let me have this.
Okay, you can have it.
Thanks.
All right. So, on the morning of January 23rd, 1959, the group boarded a train that was heading towards the Ural Mountains. During the time of their trip, there were obviously many photos and diary entries made by the group to document their progress so that they could say, hey, we did this expedition. And that's just what people did. They didn't have social media back in the day. They wanted to write down in their diary.
You mean to tell me they didn't have a MySpace top 10?
Nope.
Dang.
Nope. Absolutely not. Not even speed dial back in that day. So,
but they did have radios.
They sure did. They sure did.
Oh man, that's a callback to one of our other episodes. Go check it out, where I make a complete fool of myself for half of the entire episode.
That's episode number 22, Carl von Kossel.
Yeah. So enjoy that. I've already been roasted many a times on it. So
as you should be. Anyway. So during the train ride, there were journal entries that were made by the group. Some of the journal entries read, I wonder what awaits us on this trip. What will we encounter? Which is kind of spooky.
Aliens.
A little bit. Maybe. The remainder of the notes on this day were worries about pretty much just like general worries, like making sure they had all their supplies, whether or not they could play music on the train, or whether or not the men would survive without their cigarettes, as written by one of the women. I thought that was funny. Fun little tidbit. But
dang, how much y'all gotta smoke for that to be entered into a diary?
I know, right? Like, that's a little bit excessive. You guys can just relax. It's hard enough to breathe up at that altitude anyway, so y'all don't need cigarettes. But I just thought it was really, kind of creepy, the excerpt that was taken out. I wonder what awaits us on this trip. What will we encounter? Why would you say that? That's crazy.
Maybe because they knew.
Like bears, maybe.
Bears. Siberian bears.
Siberian aliens, more like. Ooh. Alien bears. Ugh.
That'd be horrifying.
Have you seen Annihilation? I've told you about Scream Bear before, right?
I don't think so.
Oh, God. That is the scary. That's like one of the only times.
I think you told me about Annihilation.
Yeah. Yeah. Annihilation's a great movie, and the most terrifying monster in any movie, I will still say to this day, is Scream Bear, because it's horrifying.
Okay.
To get to their destination, they actually needed to alternate vehicles because there were different terrains that because I think first they took the train, obviously, to get there, and then they had to take a bus, then they took a truck, then they took a sleigh because of the snow, and then finally they had to walk the rest of the way, so they had to put on their ski shoes or whatever. The ones with the what is that called? The little basket things on the bottom? I think they're ski shoes. I don't know.
The thing looks like tennis rackets?
I don't live in snow.
Hey, once in a blue moon we get some.
A couple years ago.
And then everything absolutely shuts down.
Yeah. You drop an ice cube here and everything shuts down.
It's funny. Ice drops from the sky and everything shuts down. There's a deadly virus and we're like, ah.
Yeah, we're good. All right. Anyway. So a few days later, just before the hike, Yuri Yudin had actually become ill. I don't know if it was from the cold, but he just wasn't feeling well. Mm-hmm. And he didn't feel like he was strong enough to make the expedition or the hike. So he actually decided to go back. And this was the day before they were set to head out. So obviously the group, they took a bunch of pictures together and, wrote notes to each other. And we're like, we'll contact you guys, contact you to let you know how the expedition went.
We'll send you a carrier pigeon.
A radio signal. So here's some of the pictures. This is them like sitting in a truck, just kind of vibing on their way to the mountain. This is when Yuri Yudin was leaving. They all just kind of, very wholesome. They were all students and friends together, and they were about to go on this big hike.
I gotta say, I have not seen the before the incident pictures.
There's tons of pictures, and actually one of my sources for my notes is there's a foundation that has been started up years ago for the Dyatlov Pass incident, just to kind of research and keep all the notes together and try to figure out what happened.
Kind of like what I found with the Zodiac Killer.
Right, and absolutely all of the pictures that were taken of that trip and all of the journals have been translated to different languages, but to English as well, and all of that's available on I think it's dyatlovpass.com or something. I can't remember exactly. It's in the bottom of my notes actually.
Dyatlov dot something.
Yeah, so dyatlovpass.com. Okay. So, but yeah, if you guys want to check that out, not only will they be on our Instagram, but there is a plethora of information that you can find on dyatlovpass.com. So I very much recommend it if you're interested in this case. So back to it. Before leaving for the hike, it was agreed that Igor Dyatlov, who was kind of the leader, kind of makeshift, he's the one that put the group together, would send a telegram to their sports club that they were all a part of as soon as they had returned to Vizhai, which is the town that they stopped in before their hike. The telegram was actually expected to be sent no later than February 12th, as they projected that they'd be done with the expedition by then. Kind of keep that in mind. So February 1st, the group had made their way out for the beginning of their expedition, and they had started on the foot of a mountain known by the indigenous Mansi population as Dead Mountain. And the Mansi population had actually warned them not to go there because obviously it's called Dead Mountain. It's dangerous.
Yeah, it's definitely not a mountain that's hey, you should totally come here.
Yeah, let's go to Dead Mountain, guys. But yeah, they were warned by the Mansi population not to continue their expedition because it was dangerous. They continued up the mountain regardless, and they set up camp just a few hundred meters from the peak. So they pretty much spent all of that first day
making lots of progress.
Making progress up the mountain. So they got really close to the peak and they decided to set up camp. It was here that the group had made their final journal entry. The final sentence of the entire journal reads, "It is difficult to imagine such a comfort on the ridge, with shrill howling winds, hundreds of kilometers away from human settlements." And it is believed that they were referring to the small campfire that they were able to make under the cold, harsh conditions. But it's kind of weird that I don't know if they were, kind of feeling discouraged by their situation or something, because it's it reads as, it's hard to imagine that we can find some sort of comfort up here. Because
when you're up that high,
it's cold.
It's cold, freezing, and there's no real civilization for a while. Got to find comfort in something.
Yeah. So weeks later, nobody had heard from any of the members of the group. There was no immediate concern, as, it was common for telegrams to be delayed by a few days due to the obvious weather conditions. It's winter. They're on a mountain. It's cold. So as days passed, friends and families did begin to grow concerned for the group. And they had actually put together a group of volunteers consisting of their fellow students and teachers. And they had set out on a search for the expedition. Later, the search was joined by the army and I'm going to butcher this, militia, which is the police force in Russia.
Okay.
And they had actually recruited planes and helicopters to join the operation because walking on foot, they just couldn't find any sign of them.
Well, yeah, and then, not everyone's an experienced hiker like these are, so.
Exactly right. On February 26th, the party found the small camp that was made near the peak of the mountain. What they found at this campsite was a greatly disturbed tent. And I actually have a picture of that too.
These pictures give me goosebumps.
Yeah, I'm going to keep these pictures up too, just to because I'm going to come back to the campsite later on and then get your opinion on what you think. So this is how they found the camp. The skis are, placed into the snow. They're upright, placed into the snow, and the tent is absolutely it's smushed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not in good condition. So they did know after beginning their investigation that the tent did seem to have been slashed open with a knife from the inside because there was a cut on it. But it's very interesting that they know it was slashed from the inside because, like, why wouldn't you walk out of the front of the tent?
Right.
People are thinking, like, were they in a hurry from something?
Well, clearly if they had to slash open the tent, there's something going on.
But interestingly, inside of the tent, the group's belongings were all like full, like their boots and coats and everything was all folded. Everything was arranged very neatly inside underneath the tent remains. On the next day, the volunteers were able to locate 9 sets of footprints leading away from the campsite towards the woods and in different directions. And this gives me the creeps. This is the thing about the knife slash, though, is that it was noted that the indentations were evident of a very calm pace by the group. So they weren't running. They slashed open the tent and for some reason just walked out and started walking towards the woods. There's no indication that there was a panic. There's no indication for any reason why they would have just walked out of the tent.
It's just weird, man.
I know, it's a crazy one. So the footprints were tracked until they were no longer traceable, as of course the snow had covered the remaining footprints. The group did continue along where they believed the trail would have been, and they did find what remained of an improvised campfire under a large cedar tree. And it was here as well that they discovered the frozen bodies of both Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonischenko. The two were found extremely underdressed. They were only wearing like light shirts, their underwear, and socks. Like they didn't have boots, they didn't have mitts, they didn't have hats, jackets, none of that. Literally just light shirts, their underwear, and socks. They got up in the middle of the night for some reason, slashed open their tent, calmly walked nearly naked to the woods for what?
Aliens, bro.
Again, at the time of their deaths, it was found that the temperature would have been around negative 30 degrees Celsius.
Too cold.
Or for us Americans, negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's literally no reason why they would have done that, logically. So it did seem that the cedar tree had damage to it, indicating that they had maybe attempted to climb it to some think that maybe they were trying to climb it to see if they could find their way back to camp, or maybe they were trying to get away from something like an animal, or even just for shelter. They don't really know what happened.
I don't even know what happened.
Unfortunately, it did take over 2 months before the bodies of the remaining 7 hikers were discovered. The next 3 hikers that were discovered were at different distances to the tent and the tree covered in snow. They were dressed a little bit more appropriately, though obviously it still wasn't enough to protect them from the harsh cold. Their bodies were found facing, very interestingly, in the direction of the tent. And that led investigators to believe that maybe they had attempted to return to the small shelter, like maybe they had walked out, who knows why, but maybe they had walked out. Maybe they were going to look for the other 2 that had left before,
But I feel like if they did that, they would have been much, much better prepared.
Exactly. But. So, because I think with these 3, they were just wearing pants along with their t-shirts and socks. I don't think they were even wearing boots. So it's very, it's very strange.
This whole case is creepy.
Yeah. And it's very creepy because they were found at different spots. I can actually pull up a map to show you exactly where everybody died. So here's the tent that was near the peak of the mountain, and the bodies were found pretty much almost in a straight line. So pretty much near the peak of the mountain that they were climbing. The 2 bodies that were found under the cedar tree in the woods were about 2,000 meters or so from the tent. And the 3 bodies that were later on found months later were found about 630 meters away from the tree in the opposite direction of the tent. And the second 3 were actually spread out pretty far apart. So it's kind of interesting. It leads me to think that they were all separately looking for the other 2 and kind of died due to the conditions, had a time like, hey, in 5 minutes, if we don't find anything, head back towards the tent. And then something happened where they all just kind of died, which is weird. Why did that happen?
I think they all got hunted by aliens.
You think so?
I don't know what it was.
I've got many theories towards the end of this, but
it's the other hikers that really throw me off.
I think I know what happened. Maybe.
Are we gonna solve the diet law
no.
incident right here on the What Sleep podcast?
I have a favorite theory. So where was I? So the 5 bodies in total were all reported to have died of hypothermia, though they did all sustain like very small injuries, like bruising, scratches, that sort of thing. Another thing to note is that 4 of those 5 bodies were discovered to have been intoxicated as they died. So 4 of those hikers were drunk when they got up, walked out.
When some went down.
Yeah. So, interesting fact. On May 4th, the final 4 hikers were found at the bottom of a hill covered in 3 meters of snow.
Now this is the one where I'm like,
this is the weird one. And it's gonna get wild. So so the final 4 hikers were found 75 meters in the opposite direction of the others, the other 3, and they were found at the bottom of a hill, almost in sort of like a ravine next to a river. During investigation, it did seem like the hikers, as some of the hikers died, the others would take their clothing to keep themselves warm because, again, for some reason, they were just incredibly underdressed for the weather and apparently didn't take it upon themselves to return to the tent, get more clothes or whatever. But as hikers were dying, they were taking their clothes to keep themselves warm. This is thought because Dubinina was actually wearing Krivonischenko's burned and torn trousers, which is interesting. How did they get burned and how did they get torn?
Just saying.
And her left foot and her shin were actually also wrapped up in a torn jacket that didn't belong to her. So I'm just curious, like, why all these things are getting torn, why they're burned, why they're underdressed, what happened. But
honestly, though,
very interesting. So 3 of the hikers that were in this ravine had sustained lethal injuries, with 1 hiker suffering from a fractured skull, and the other 2 had multiple fractured ribs and massive internal bleeding. Some could say that they probably just fell, but it's not a super steep drop is where they were, but it's kind of a weird place for them to have been. And the medical examiner does believe that the 3 hikers seem to have taken a massive fall with a force that was similar to a car crash. So they were hit so hard by something that it was comparable to a car crash. And when people fall, like, looking at this hill, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Basically, there's no way that they would have fallen that hard.
And if they did, and they had like all those internal injuries, there would have been some sort of external sign as well. But there wasn't anything external. This case hypes me up.
Yeah,
totally.
it's crazy. The medical examiner also stated that he believed the injuries were sustained while the hikers were still alive beforehand. Blah, blah, blah. Though that the injuries could not have been inflicted by another person due to the severity of them. 2 of the hikers in the ravine had also been discovered with, and this is a little bit descriptive, but quote unquote gaping eye sockets, and one of the women was missing her tongue. So their soft tissues were missing their eyeballs. Of course, it is possible that scavenging animals could have been the reason for this. The last of the 4 in the ravine had been found to have had a broken nose and a deformed neck. I couldn't exactly find what that meant, but it might have been twisted or fractured.
Weird angle or something.
Yeah. Though they did know that he had died of hypothermia, so he didn't die from his injuries from his nose or his neck.
Which that sucks.
Yeah. So all injuries that were sustained by the hiking group were absolutely all of them were internal. There was no evidence of external injury to the body. So there wasn't any evidence of an impact or, cuts or anything like that to them. So it's like, how did they get those internal injuries?
Alien space ray.
So at this point, we're going to go ahead and talk about some theories. Obviously, the biggest question is, why did the group leave the tent? Why was the tent slashed from the inside? Were they running from something? Was it hypothermia? Or were they just looking for supplies?
Well, for me, I'm going to rule out the hypothermia thing because they did have like a little heater inside the tent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
So there's no way they were freezing in there.
Right. Some people think that it was hyperthermia, though, because like it can make you do kind of, just things that wouldn't make sense normally. I don't believe that it was hypothermia. I firmly believe that it's one of the theories we're going to talk about. All right. So obviously we talked about how experienced they were, and it makes absolutely no sense why any of them, with their survival skills and experience in hiking, just in general, why they did what they did, why they did their actions. So my biggest thing is, of all the overwhelming information, all of the clues that they have, all the pictures, all the diary entries, just everything that they have, this case is still unsolved. And it's been 61 years since the incident. And it's insane. It's like, why don't we know? I'm going to tell you why we don't know. So
tell me.
The resolution of the inquest to the incident was finalized in May of 1959, which was only just 3 or 4 months later in May of 1959. And the files for the investigation were actually sent to a secret archive. The case was reopened by Russian authorities in February of 2019 on the 60th anniversary of the incident. And it is actually being investigated as a possibility of an avalanche or a hurricane. So they're ruling
Russia
out...
even get hurricanes?
I mean, it's next to the Arctic Ocean, but I feel like it's frozen or cold. I guess they have strong winds and stuff. I was thinking blizzard. Sorry, there's a duck outside.
I mean, that's a possibility, but like most of the hurricanes are, the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
Where, you might mainly hits the US and Cuba and the Bahamas and stuff. But and some of Asia gets like typhoons and whatnot. But
my thing with that is that there would very clearly have been evidence of an avalanche or of a hurricane.
Oh, yeah. If it was an avalanche, they would have been rushing out. They would Russian.
Wow.
They would have rushed out of that tent, which would explain the slashing. But then,
sure, but looking at the tent, like, it's not absolutely like smothered in snow. The bodies weren't smothered in snow. They were able to go into the forest in all of these different directions and died where they were.
Yeah. And then, then the whole calm walk pace pretty much that they had too, like, just doesn't explain the whole avalanche theory.
And same with the hurricane. Like, if it was windy, everything would have been in disarray. All of the clothes and things inside of the tent were still very neatly organized. And not only that, like, we've been recording weather events for a very long time. Like, they could have just looked back and been like, yeah, there was a hurricane that was recorded on that day. There wasn't. Nope. So get out of here, Russia. Don't come at me, though. All right. So one of the theories talks about some radioactivity, and we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Aliens.
An interesting fact to note is that some of the clothes were actually found to be, quote unquote, abnormally radioactive. On May 28th, the criminal case was discontinued, with the lead investigator writing, quote, "The cause of death was," this makes me so mad.
Oh, no.
He wrote, quote, "The cause of death was an unknown compelling force which the hikers were unable to overcome." And that was his conclusion to the case. And I'm just like, you didn't solve it. You just closed it because you couldn't figure it out.
Yep, I don't know. They don't know. They died, and I'm done.
Only 3 to 4 months after it happened. I'm like, dude, you didn't even.
Yep.
No.
As we've clearly seen from my last episode, the police really don't try when they don't want to.
I just don't understand. Like, it's such a strange case. And even if you didn't want to do your job, like, you've got to be at least a little bit interested as to what happened. But again, this might go into my favorite theory of why he closed the case so fast.
Screaming bears.
Oh, God. All right. So, concerning Dubinina's tongue, some believe that it was cut off before her death, though her medical report does read that, quote, "The diaphragm of the mouth and the tongue is missing." There was no evidence of it being cut out, though some people still, insist that it was cut out. In the same report, the examiner writes, quote, "Gaping orbits, the eyeballs are missing." He explains that her body, along with the others, were found in a watery area next to the stream, which could explain that there was soft tissue damage and that it was post-mortem because, again, they were out there for 2 months.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility. It could have happened. Again, scavengers.
Like the eyes, I understand because, those essentially just deflate. Because pretty much just water.
I mean, it's just soft tissue.
Yeah.
He also did indicate that it was probably putrefaction and decomposition.
When it comes to that, now I'm starting to second guess because And that kind of cold, it would kind of preserve their bodies almost.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is another point that people bring up all the time. It's like, okay, well, they're in probably one of the coldest parts in the world, you know?
Yeah.
Why weren't their bodies preserved better than that? Like, and especially in February in Russia, the water would probably have been frozen. There's probably no running water near them in the river, you know what I mean? So it's like it's really interesting to see all of these different points coming into play here.
Like I actually just saw this like a video not too long ago of like this mummified like cowboy body from like the 1860s. Mm-hmm. I mean, he still had his mustache, his teeth, his eyes were still there. You could actually make out his cornea and all that stuff. Oh, really? That's why creepy. I'm like, it's really creepy. But like, you would think, like it's honestly one of the best preserved human bodies we've ever found. Yeah. Because like I said, he still had his eyes and hair and all that stuff. But you know, them being out in like negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit weather, you would think that, you know, they would be relatively on par with that. Because like we find
not perfect, obviously, but still preserved.
Good enough for 3 months of discovery.
Yeah. I don't know. There was a lot of interesting work done around this case. So some people also do say that she was found to have, and this is probably just a rumor, I'm not exactly sure exactly where this came from, but some people do say that she had over 100 grams of blood in her stomach, but the medical examiner had actually reported her stomach containing, quote unquote, 100 centimeters squared of a dark red slimy mass. So it could have been food coupled with blood or something like that, but he didn't indicatively say that it was blood. So not sure on that one. Very interesting thing. But again, she was having massive internal bleeding. So there's a chance that maybe her stomach was punctured somewhere and she had gotten blood inside, or, you know, with the tongue being cut off, the blood might have drained back into her stomach. So. And like the red string, and like Charlie from It's Always Sunny with the red string and the pins, like, I got this.
And then there's me. Anyways, it started blasting.
All right. So another theory is that 3 of the articles of clothing were actually, again, we're coming back to those abnormally radioactive ones. Of course, it is known that everything in the world is just a little bit radioactive. That's just a fact. It's a thing that happens. Radiological students who don't work on radios.
I'm never going to live that down.
Radiological studies report that an area of, sorry, this is going to get really technical and I don't fully understand it, but I understand what they're trying to say. So they report that an area of 150 centimeters squared should not exceed 5,000 DPM, which is disintegrations per minute, or the activity source of radioactivity, so just radiation. The 3 articles of clothing were actually found to have exactly 5,000 DPM, 5,600 DPM, and 9,900 DPM. Like the max DPM most things should have is 5,000, and that's like
almost double.
Yeah, that right there, the 9,900 DPM is almost double, and I think that was found on one of the t-shirts. The report gave an explanation that the clothes could have been contaminated as here we go. As a radioactive dust fell from the atmosphere, or the clothes were susceptible to contamination when in contact with radioactive substances. Duh. But where and what?
As radioactive dust fell from the atmosphere. Listen, what kind of Twilight Sparkle Princess bowl is that?
We'll get into that. It's possible. And I'll tell you why in a bit. Do you think
that like an alien was just like, Salt Bay, you get some radioactivity?
Could have been, but I think I know what it was.
Aliens.
So could have been aliens.
I'm just saying. If you haven't noticed, I'm really into the alien theory.
Yeah. I'm shocked you haven't done an alien story yet.
Honestly, there's not a lot of good ones. This is a really with super credible.
No, not credible.
So
still, maybe at one point you do Unsolved all the time.
I do Unsolved.
Yeah.
All the time.
So why can't you do
I'm just saying,
non-credible story?
there's only like 3 that I have in mind to do. We'll have to see, but I'm not going to spoil which ones here.
Yeah, you'll have to find out later. Come back for more. So the studies were actually unable to determine the source of contamination, obviously, though they didn't rule out quote unquote natural occurrences such as radioactive dust falling from the sky. Another explanation was brought to light, and I do agree this is probably where it came from, but it was found that Alexander Kolevatov had worked in a nuclear facility developing nuclear materials, and Georgy Krivonashenko had worked in a top secret plutonium plant for the production of nuclear weapons. So the 3 articles of clothing were also discovered to have belonged to the pair. So it's probably. But
you would think if they worked in a nuclear facility, they would have some form of measurement to make sure your stuff isn't radioactive.
Right. Like, I see that's a thing too, but it does make the most sense. That's the most sensical. Unless you're talking about my favorite theory. But that's the most sensible explanation.
Explain why the clothes would be radioactive, but it doesn't explain why they were allowed out with those clothes that are that radioactive.
They probably should have, if they didn't have uniforms, like lab suits or something like that, when working with nuclear weaponry or plutonium. But what do I know? I don't know. And I also don't know how long it was.
This was before Chernobyl.
Been. Yeah.
So I assume they were probably not too worried about it.
I guess I don't know. So there is a fact that unfortunately several of the Mansi people were interrogated and investigated because it was theorized that they may have attacked the group for quote unquote encroaching on their land. Obviously, thankfully, the investigation on them was quickly dropped as the autopsy results did show that the injuries were not made by another human. So,
and didn't the Mansi people have a camp nearby that they stayed at?
It was further down the mountain, yeah, but it was closer to the foot of the mountain. This was because remember, before they had even started on their trek, the Mansi people were like, "Just don't go. Like, this is dead mountain.
Don't go over there." Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, but thankfully, that was quickly dropped, and they weren't looked into further. So. Another theory, of course, is aliens.
Aliens.
Around the time of the expedition, there were numerous sources that claimed to have witnessed UFOs in the form of orbs of light moving across the sky.
I mean, I'm just saying.
And they were there for a few seconds to up to a minute. The claims were made by both hiking groups, as well as there were three different soldiers that reported seeing these strange UFOs. The indigenous Mansi population, as well as geologists working in the area at the time, had also reported balls of fire in the sky during the time of the incident. So, the night of the incident, it was seen that there were quote unquote balls of fire in the sky.
Like I said, it's aliens.
The sightings were all reported before, during, and after the incident. So it for weeks before, weeks after, months after, they were still seeing these things. So there is a photo that was taken by the camera from the group that seems to capture some sort of orb, and I'm going to show you that.
I remember this picture very well.
So I don't know how I feel about this one because, and this was actually the very last photo that was ever taken by the group.
It's super out of focus. It's like if you were to take a video of a lit candle in the background and then just make it super out of focus and you get that little artifacting effect.
Yeah. So what we're looking at is it's a completely black background. And there's kind of towards the center is like a white quote unquote orb and then a little bit of white on the side of it. But this could be literally anything from a picture of snow falling to a candle to a flashlight to maybe an alien,
I'm gonna go with alien.
It's your favorite theory.
It is.
That's the UFO theory. And now time for my favorite theory, which I believe is the truth. Don't come at me, Russia. Is military. This is the military.
Boring.
So it should be taken into consideration that at the time of the incident in February of 1959, this was during the Cold War. And obviously governments were developing and experimenting with rockets and aerial weaponry. Speculation of military testing had roused many people to come to that conclusion, or this conclusion, which I'm about to talk about. The campsite is said to have fallen within the path of a Soviet parachute mine exercise that they were doing. This alleges, obviously, that the hikers would have been woken up maybe by a loud explosion and tried to flee the tent in a panic and were unable to find their way back. So I'm going to come back to the whole calmly walking away. Like, maybe they heard an explosion, immediately slashed open the tent to be like, what was that? Looked out, didn't see anything. So then they walked out to investigate. So I think maybe that's what happened. Because, I mean, you're going to be scared. You know what I mean? Like a mine going off close by. So, and it is actually a fact that, and there are records of parachute mines being tested by the Soviet military in the area around the time the hikers were there. So it's a pretty good theory, in my opinion. Parachute mines are mines that will detonate while still in the air and produce very signature injuries similar to the ones found on the hikers. Those injuries reported include heavy internal damage with comparably minute external trauma. So blasts from these mines could cause a car crash worth of force internal damage, but there's no external, like visible external injuries. And it could also explain.
I guess.
It could also explain some of the clothes that were burned. It could also explain some maybe some tears. I don't know. That could be from something else, but definitely the burning. And in my opinion, maybe another one went off and threw the group into the ravine, is what I'm thinking happened, maybe. So again, it is the most popular theory that I suggested, and the floating UFOs reported could have been the floating mines. Some do speculate that the bodies were unnaturally manipulated due to the characteristic like livor mortis markings that were on their bodies, as well as a lot of the bodies did have burns to their hair and their skin. So, I mean, could have been from a candle, but I think it was from a mine.
So the only thing with that is like when they find some sort of remnants of the mines exploding as well as parachutes.
Not if the government covered it up.
I guess.
So photographs of the investigation do show that the tent did seem to have been put up incorrectly as well, which is not something that experienced hikers would have done.
Yeah.
This could have been a cover-up. And also the tent did show a lot lighter coverage of snow on it. So it looked like it had been there for not as much time as, say, like their bodies, which doesn't make sense because if you think about it, if the tent was put up the whole time, it should have more snow than the bodies did because the tent would have been up longer than their bodies would have been laying there. But comparably, the bodies had a lot more snow on them than the tent did. So it looked like it was reassembled.
Yeah.
So maybe a cover up. I don't know. Don't come at me, Russia.
An alien cover up.
Another really good point for this theory is that the files were suppressed by the Soviet authorities. So they could have done a cover up, tucked away the files, kept it from the public. But again, that is a standard procedure for domestic incidents in the USSR at the time.
I feel like that's pretty much anywhere.
But yeah, it's pretty much anywhere. And when it was released, it does seem like some of the documents weren't exactly truthful, obviously.
Yeah.
So those are some of the theories. Obviously, I have a favorite one. You guys can come to your own conclusion as to what happened, but it's very strange. So after the investigation, a little bit of the aftermath of the incident, Anatoly Gushin, wrote the book, The Price of State Secrets is 9 Lives, which is really morbid. And it was...
That's a good book title name.
Yeah, it really is.
That's a really good title.
So this book was actually criticized for the speculative theory of a Soviet secret weapon experiment. But I mean, there's documentation that it was a real thing, so I don't know why it was scrutinized.
Also, just to kind of call back to Morbid. I don't know why I said Honder. What does that even mean? Call back to Morbid. The Price of State Secrets is 9 Lives is a very good band name.
Oh, yeah.
Just saying.
That is true. I remember that. I love you, Morbid.
So enjoy that. I will take at least $2 of commission for that band name.
At least $2.
At least $2.
Oh, God. So much of the public had actually discussed the books as it piqued their interest into the kind of paranormal side of the incident. Many of those involved in the investigation did actually come forward after about 30 years of silence to report new facts about the case.
I'm surprised you didn't talk about like the theory of the Yeti.
I forgot that one. Oh, no.
Anyways, another theory is that it's a Yeti that went around and just like smashed all these people.
I did all the ones that might have been relevant.
Yeah, which, you know, the Yeti one is probably the like least likely.
Yeah.
Which is really sad because today we're talking about aliens, but
I mean, we still did we do cryptid episodes from every once in a while. Because
that would explain the like inhuman strength type of injuries and.
But there's no external injuries.
Yeah, that's the only thing. But, you know, I feel like, if a strong force, like if you were down on the ground and something were to just like push on your chest until your thing caved in.
With so much pressure?
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yetis can be pretty strong, I think. I don't know.
I don't think they exist.
I mean, they probably don't, but hey.
So, just a fun theory right there.
Yeah, just a little extra theory in there for you.
I wish I could believe in cryptids so much.
I don't know, the Black Eyed Kids one.
I still am playing with them. So those that did come forward, one of them was actually the former police officer who led the official inquest in 1959. His name was Lev Ivanov. In 1990, he published an article that included his admission that the investigation team had no rational explanation for the incident. And he stated that his team had reported seeing quote-unquote flying saucers during the course of their investigation. He received direct orders from higher-ranking regional officials to dismiss the claims, however.
It's aliens, bro.
In 1999, the Dyatlov Foundation was founded at Yekaterinburg. Sorry. I do apologize. Yekaterinburg.
I'm just glad it's not me for once.
The foundation does aim to continue their search for answers to the incident and to preserve the memory of those hikers that perished. So, tell us what you think about that, because that's all I got. There's not much of a conclusion. It's a crazy, weird case. A lot of the details are super, it's strange. Nobody knows what happened.
I mean, I do, but,
I mean, so do I. It was military. But
it was aliens. What?
It was military. Don't come at me, Russia. If you liked that episode, do leave a like and let us know what you thought and what you think happened at Dyatlov. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at What Sleep Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at What Sleep Pod. And if you want to find more places to listen to our podcast, because we're pretty much on everything, you can go and visit our website at whatsleeppodcast.buzzsprout.com.
Until we get our own official website, which I want to try to work on in the near future.
We also have a Patreon where you can help support the podcast for things such as another microphone for better quality, a website, a place for you guys where we can, put all of our merch there, all of our episodes just directly on our website, stuff like that. Really just kind of bring the quality of the podcast up. But we really do appreciate anything that you guys do for us, whether it's a follow, whether it's a recommendation, a Patreon subscription, buying our mugs. Guys, we got mugs. We got sweaters.
For all of your coffee /tea /hot cocoa needs.
And if you do become a Patreon, you get 15% off of our entire merch store.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy. That's a good deal.
That's a lot of savings, honestly.
And you can find our merch at teespring.com/store/whatsleep. So go check us out.
And yeah, we just recently got in one of the sweaters we have up there.
Guys, they're so soft. They're so soft.
I'm going to buy me one.
I'm going to buy 5. I love our sweaters.
I have yet to try out the t-shirts yet. No.
Yeah.
I got to get those.
Yeah.
I would just want the purple one, honestly.
Yeah.
Because the purple's the best.
Purple's a bop. Purple's our podcast, dude.
I know, it really is. Literally, when we were creating it, it was we were like, purple.
Yeah, purple's the color. That's what we're going with. We love it.
So.
But yeah, we'll see you guys in the next episode on Monday.
Bye.